Welcome to the first Lunch and Learn session in the series on operational excellence. This session is an introduction to operational excellence, creating a high-performing organization. This session is sponsored by Jamestown Community College Workforce Readiness. The session is facilitated by Max Krug from Future State Engineering. We hope that you enjoy the session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining the session today. So what we want to talk about is operational excellence, creating a high-performing organization. So we only got 20 minutes, so I'm going to try to be succinct and what it takes to create a high-performing organization. And again, we encourage questions throughout the session. So use the chat or raise your hand to solicit a question. So I want to start out by talking about what is operational excellence. So I don't want to define it. So you can go on Google, you can search for a definition of operational excellence. You're going to get 100 different definitions. So I don't want to try to define it, but I want to define what are the criteria that need to be in place to achieve operational excellence. Okay, so doesn't matter what type of organization you are, you can achieve operational excellence. So I was good to see that there's a diverse background of people signed up today. We have manufacturers, we have healthcare providers, we have service providers, we have independent people, we have so many different people on the session today. So is operational excellence for us? So the first question is, do you have a customer? If you have a customer, then yes, you can do operational excellence. Okay, so really it starts with the customer. So we need focus on the customer. And how do we achieve operational excellence? It starts by understanding the needs of the customer. Okay, so we need to understand what are the needs of our customers. Of course, customers might have different needs. Different customers might have different needs, but we need to understand all the needs of the customer. Okay, so that's the first criteria. We have a customer, we understand what their needs are. So I'm amazed at how many companies I go into that don't understand their customer needs. Okay, so a lot of work needs to be done here on really understanding what are the needs of the customers. Yes, they tell you what their needs are, but there's also needs that they don't tell you about. So we call those implied needs, right? So things that they just assume that maybe you know, but maybe you don't know. Okay, so we really need to make sure we understand the needs of the customer. So then those feed into your organization. Okay, so the needs of the customer are the inputs to start designing your organization to satisfy those needs. Okay, so on the output of that, we have some level of customer satisfaction. So hopefully we have a high level of customer satisfaction. Sometimes we have customers that aren't so satisfied, but the goal of operational excellence is to provide more value than our competitors are providing, right? So if we want to capture more market share, whoever our customers are, we need to provide more value than what they can get from our competitors or a substitute product or service. Okay, so within the organization, we have different functions. So we look at three basic pillars in a company. We have the finance function, we have the sales and marketing function, and we have the operations function. So the operations function is the one that converts inputs into outputs that satisfy our customers. So we call those the value-added activities. So it doesn't matter if you're a service organization, a manufacturer, healthcare provider, there's actions or steps that you need to do to convert your inputs to desired output that meet our customers' needs. Okay, so those three functions need to work in concert with one another, right? And so in the middle here, we have leadership's role. So leadership's role is to make sure that those functions are operating in conjunction with one another to meet the customer's needs. Okay, so how do we do that? Typically through a vision statement, a mission statement for the organization that defines where we're going as an organization. So for me, the vision statement is what direction we're going as an organization. So are we going north? Are we going west? Are we going south? What direction's the organization going? And the mission statement says why we're going in that direction. So if you don't have a mission and vision statement, that's one of the first things you need to do to put in place. And everyone needs to understand what direction we're going and why we're going that direction. So I was in one company, an aerospace company in Ohio, and I walk into their lobby, mission statement on the wall, vision statement, quality policy. I go and do operational excellence workshop with the leadership team and say, what's the vision statement of the company? And it was crickets. Not one person in that room could tell me the vision statement. That's a problem. Okay, so I said, I know what the vision statement is, and I don't even work here. Okay, so it's got to be something that the people understand, right? And they know how their actions are supporting that statement. Okay, but it needs to be focused on providing value to the customer. Okay, so this is the basic structure we want to have in place. Understanding the needs of the customer, understanding the organization, understanding how to provide value to our customers, and there's a component of a leadership role in achieving that. So now I want to go a little bit deeper since we have the basic structure defined. So what are the necessary and sufficient conditions to create a high-performing organization? Okay, so I have two components here, necessary and sufficient. So what's the difference between those two? What is necessary and what is sufficient? Okay, so when we look at necessary, it's something that needs to be in place to achieve some desired result. So what is sufficient? That element that's in place is actually delivering the results that we're trying to achieve. So a lot of companies I see or organizations have necessary functions in place, but they're not sufficient. So yes, they're doing it, but it's not achieving the results that they're looking for. Okay, so we need both conditions to be a high-performing organization. The necessary systems in place to achieve what we're trying to achieve, and sufficiency that it's actually achieving the results that we're looking for. So what are the necessary conditions that we need to have in place to achieve operational excellence? So if you look at this photo here at the bottom of the screen, if you had one word to describe this photo, what would that one word be? So most people can answer that question. The word is focus. So one of the things that we need is focus. Okay, so focus can be defined by two terms. One is doing what should be done. So focus means we're doing the things necessary to achieve our objectives. But there's also another component of focus, not doing what shouldn't be done. So many organizations are doing things that aren't aligned with what they're trying to achieve. Stop doing those things, right? It's not helping us get closer to our goal. So the first necessary condition is we satisfy all the customer's needs. So I put all in bold because it's not satisfying part of the customer's need. That's not sufficient. Sufficiency means we're satisfying all the customer's needs. And of course, to do that, first we need to understand what are the customer's needs. If we don't know the customer's needs or understand them, the chance of meeting them, slim to none. So it's important that we understand that. Second, we meet the needs of the organization. So not only do we need to meet the customer's needs, the organization has needs. So I call that the stakeholders. So who are the stakeholders? It's the employees, it's the owners, it's the community. So you define for your organization, who are the stakeholders? So necessary condition, meet the customer's needs. Second, meet the organization's needs. Third, establish the mindset to achieve sustainable improvement. So there's two components here. First is mindset. So if we don't have the correct mindset, then we're not going to have the resources or the people to achieve that sustainable improvement. So I want to quantify this here. We're talking sustainable improvement, not just making improvements and then 3 months later we're back to where we were, right? So an improvement isn't an improvement if it's not sustainable, right? So it has to be sustainable. So we got to have that mindset that every process can be improved and improved significantly. So when we're looking at operational excellence, we're not trying to achieve 2 or 3% improvement. We're talking breakthrough improvement, 50%, 80%, 90% improvement in performance. Okay, so if you don't have the mindset that you can actually achieve a 50% improvement or 100% improvement, you're not going to get there. Okay, so a famous quote that I like to say that Henry Ford said, one of his quotes was, if you say you can or you say you can't, you're right. So if we don't have the mindset that we can get significant sustainable improvement, you're not going to get it. So I recently did a project in Toronto where they were having problems meeting their customer demand. And so they said, hey, can you come in and look at our organization and see how we can improve our output? Because we've tried everything. We've done everything. There's probably nothing that we haven't considered. So I went in, did an assessment, said, I can double the output of the organization. They're like, what? Are you nuts? So they said, okay, come in and show us how to do that. So we went in, met with the team. First thing we did is establish, okay, what's the objective we're trying to achieve? And of course, oh, there's no way we can achieve that. And so we did a little bit of training. Then we did some brainstorming and we ran a trial. So the first trial out of the box, 70% improvement. So we did a measure of their output in terms of how many pounds they produced every shift. And we did measure the number of bags. We went from an average of 70 to, I think, 125 or something, the first trial, right? That's breakthrough improvement. But without that mindset that we can actually achieve that, they would have never thought that that level of improvement was possible. Okay, so mindset is so important. Last is establish a positive change in the organizational culture. So the next session, we're going to talk about culture. So what is culture? So it's how things get done within the organization, how decisions are made, how people interact with one another, right? So unless we make a positive change in that culture, right, that's not what we're looking for, right? The necessary condition is when we start this journey, we get a positive change in organizational culture. And again, it has to start with focus, doing what should be done, not doing what shouldn't be done. So within the organization, we need alignment. Okay, so I want to talk about effectiveness and efficiency here. What's the difference between the two? So I'm looking at creating organizational effectiveness, and we do that through alignment by getting everybody aligning to the same goal. Okay, so if we start with the goal, we want to be a high-performing organization, then we look at it from a rowing team perspective. So if I have a team of rowers, right, the goal is to get to the finish line as effectively as possible. So everyone needs to work together and row at the same pace. And the better we row at the same pace, the straighter and faster the boat's going to go. But if you look at the boat at the bottom, right, they're going off course. And if we focus on the second rower, he's 3 times more efficient than the rest of the team. Great, right? But by him being efficient, the system or the goal is not being achieved. So one of the hardest paradigms, and a paradigm is a way of thinking that companies need to make when going through this transition, is in order for the system to be effective, some processes actually got to be less efficient, right? So if we're focusing and trying to make everybody busy and efficient, you're going to be the boat on the bottom. So also think of it in terms of a symphony, right? A symphony orchestra. Everybody has to be in sync, right? So the goal of the symphony isn't to play your music as fast as possible, right? There's a time to play and there's a time to wait. So you need to understand, when is my time to play? When is my time to wait? That creates synchronization. So organizational alignment is all about synchronization of the organization. Okay, so everyone's rowing, everyone understands their goal, how their actions affect everybody else in the organization, and how we work together to achieve the high-performing organization. So how is operational excellence achieved? So through three things: focus on the need of the customer, right? So we talked about this. And again, the word focus. So we want to understand the significant needs of the customer. Yes, the customer might tell us they have multiple needs, but what are the significant needs? Second is empowering employees. So the employees in your organization are the most valuable asset. The people working in the process are the experts. We need to leverage that knowledge. Okay, so I'm amazed, again, by leveraging the knowledge of the people in the process, how much improvement can be made. And again, I've seen improvements as much as 200% improvement. Then third is focusing management attention. So what is management attention? That's our ability to stay on task and complete something before we move on to something else. So hopefully from working from home, people can understand what focus management attention is, right? So if you're not in the office getting interrupted every 5 or 10 minutes, that's not focus management attention. I can actually sit down and complete something before moving on to the next activity. That's focus management attention. That interruption throughout the day is a cultural issue, right? So depending on your culture, it might be a calm environment, might be a chaotic environment. So we need to focus on how to change that culture. So just to summarize here, what is operational excellence? First, defined by the customer, okay? Value, so what does the customer perceive as value? And that's through explicit or implicit needs. Second, it's the relentless pursuit of delivering the customer expectations each and every time. So not at the beginning of the month and then we do something different at the end of the month, right? Whether it's the beginning of the month, end of the month, we deliver those expectations the same each and every time. Two, establishing the necessary and sufficient conditions to deliver the expectations in the most effective manner. One, leadership commitment and alignment. So from my experience, if there's no leadership commitment and there's no leadership buy-in, less than a 20% chance the company's going to make a transition. So the necessary condition is that leadership commitment and alignment. Second, empowering the employees, getting the people with the knowledge to use their knowledge to leverage the organization to creating that higher performing organization. Third, establishing the correct culture and mindset. So mindset, again, is so important. And then fourth, focus, focus, focus. I can't stress focus enough, right? So many organizations are unfocused, doing things that shouldn't be done. Okay, so going back to that effectiveness versus efficiency, yes, I can make a process more efficient, but is that making the organization more effective? If no, don't do that. So doing what should be done to achieve the goal not doing what shouldn't be done. Okay, so our 20 minutes is up. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining. Again, next Wednesday, we're going to be talking about organizational culture and doing a little bit deeper dive into that subject matter. So at this point, we can open it up for questions.
And all you have to do is unmute yourself in order to ask a question. And while we're waiting for that, we are going to offer, JCC's Workforce Readiness is going to offer an online version of Max's full course, Introduction to Operational Excellence. That will be offered starting on May 12th. It'll be Tuesday and Thursday, May 12th, 14th, 19th, and 21st from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. It'll be an interactive Zoom session, so you'll be able to ask Max questions along the way and have some good interaction, which is one of the best things that I think about this format, is be able to ask Max the questions. We are, because of the pandemic and situation that we're all in, we are going to offer that class at a half price deal, and that will be $149 per person. So you can visit JCC's Workforce Readiness webpage in order to register that. You should be able to, probably starting today, possibly tomorrow, but through May 10th, we will take registrations.
Do we have any questions, comments?
Yes. I'm looking through the chat here to see some questions. What is the timeline for a breakthrough improvement?
So that's a great question. So again, if we get the leadership buy-in, less than 3 months. So if we get agreement on, yes, this is what we need to do, within 3 months, we start to see significant improvement.
Okay. And how do we know what to do and what not to do at work?
That's another great question. Okay, so again, we need to define those customer needs. We need to define the goal. So I didn't want to define operational excellence because I didn't want to put a definition around, because you need to define it for your organization. So what does operational excellence mean for us? So if you start doing an initiative and you define what operational excellence is, if that initiative doesn't meet that need, don't do it. So a lot of times we do it through our key performance indicators. So we define the goal, we define how we're going to measure that goal through key performance indicators. Okay, so if the activity that you want to do doesn't move the needle on the key performance indicator, don't do it.
Okay. Will the PowerPoint be accessible for printing? So can you provide the PowerPoint and then have us email one?
Yep.
Okay.
So I'll send that so we can email it to everybody that participated today.
All right.
And I think we're also going to have this video available.
Yes, we are. And how do you choose the project with the greatest benefit?
So we'll talk a little about this next week in culture. So when we choose the first initiative, we want to do two things. We want to see significant benefit for the area that we're focusing on, and we want to get rapid improvement. Okay, so again, going back to those KPIs, we can take each initiative that we want to focus on and say, okay, based on our KPIs, if we do this activity, which ones are going to move the needle on, and is there other ones that could move the needle more? So you got to be careful here, because we could have one that could move the needle significantly, but it's going to take us 9 months to get there. I would recommend doing something that we're going to see immediate impact in 2 to 3 weeks, but moves the needle less, right? But we'll talk about next week in the culture session, because we need to get that momentum moving, right? If we don't get significant results in a short period of time, and it's like months and months and months, we start to lose the momentum.
Okay. What are some other examples of how these principles have improved other businesses? And was this a revenue or a margin increase?
So both revenue and margin. So we've seen examples of, and so this we'll talk about breakthroughs. So I'm working with a company recently, and probably the last year, we've taken their lead time from 18 weeks to 8 weeks, improved their on-time delivery for the one plant from about 40% above 90%, reduced the work in process by from 2.5 million to about 1 million, and of course freed up that cash and then increased the net profit at the same time. So that's what we're talking about, significant improvement, where multiple KPIs are affected, not just one. So we're not focusing on just one KPI, we're affecting multiple KPIs. Did that answer that question?
Yes, and it just knocked me out of the Zoom. So hang on a second. Oh gosh. In the meantime, if other people have questions, just go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm having trouble with the main page here.
Actually, Kathleen, I can see the chat. There's one that says, why can't you get these breakthrough improvements, but we have not been able in the past? So, or why can you, I'm sorry, why can you get these breakthrough improvements, but have not been able to in the past?
That's another great question. So that goes back to mindset. So, back to that Henry Ford statement, right? If you say you can or you say you can't, you're right. So, just like this company in Toronto, we've tried everything, right? There's nothing that you're going to bring to us that we haven't tried, but we got 70% improvement. How's that possible? Because we had them look at the situation from a different perspective. So if we have everybody looking at the same picture from the same perspective, we're all going to see the same things. What we do is we come and say, hey, look at the picture from this perspective. If you look at it from that perspective, then we see something different. And so part of this, you have to go through a paradigm shift. If you don't go through the paradigm shift, you're not going to get the breakthrough improvement. So a paradigm shift is a way of thinking or belief. We got to change that belief. So one of the things that I stated earlier, right? In order for the system to be efficient, most steps in the process need to be less efficient. That's a hard concept for people to understand. So doing more activity doesn't make sense to people. So we see a lot of times in maybe doing a setup, right? You need to do more setups. Why would I want to do that? Because you're feeding the downstream operation that needs 5 parts to put their assembly together. Giving them 1 doesn't help downstream process. So I'd rather do multiple setups and give them the 5 parts that they need so they can keep working. That's so counterintuitive to people. It's like, why would I do all those setups? So part of it is breaking those paradigms that people believe for years and years and years. Oh, this is the way it's done. So when I challenge people, why do you do it that way? What's the number one answer I get? Been doing it that way for 50 years. Right? And you're the first one that's ever challenged us why we're doing it that way. So you got to break that mindset. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the third session about focusing on the customer.
I think you can go ahead, Ryan, if you want to unmute.
Perfect. How are you? Max,
Good.
thank you for being with us. I really wanted to give you credit for the rowboat analogy. I thought it was perfectly apt. My question relates to, at what point does that extra efficiency in that one rower become a tipping point? In other words, is there a percentage of extra efficiency that should indicate a need for a larger structural change?
So again, we want to make sure if we're not meeting all the customer requirements, I'd rather take that efficiency of the extra rower and put him in another position where he can help support meeting those customer needs, right? So that's where cross training comes in. It's like, hey, this guy has this extra capacity. Let's utilize that to fix some other area in the company that we're not satisfying the need.
I also really loved your comment about sometimes needing to slow that person down to make the whole organization more effective. So just well done. Thank you.
That's extremely hard.
Yeah.
Oh, so just real quick. So the one we did in Toronto, so we broke the team up into 3 groups, and then we had one group we were focused on, we want to keep this resource busy, right? Our goal is to keep this one resource busy. So after we did the first trial, we got back together and said, so how did it work? The people were like, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Because we were standing around half the day. I go, do you realize we almost did 70% more and you stood around half the day? They're like, what? How was that possible? So it's not about staying busy, right? It's about making that boat move in the most effective manner, right? It's a hard concept for people to they understand it, but to execute it is extremely difficult.
Well, thank you.
Great question. So it's not uncommon that we can expose 30, 40, 50% capacity by taking those people that are the fast rowers and reallocating them to some other area in the organization that they can support.
Max, what is the best way to gain buy-in for a new mindset?
So training starts with training and education. So we want to educate the people, train them, and then do it. So taking and doing the concept and testing it in an area, right? Because even when you train people, they still won't believe it, right? So then we got to apply it. So we really want to focus on the application part of it. So it's, yes, good to train people. They understand the mindset. So we have a lot of simulations that we've developed to help change that mindset. But then we got to translate that into, okay, what does that mean for our company? And then let's take an area and apply it. Then we really start to get the buy-in. We're going to talk about this a little bit next week in the culture about the change matrix. So how to get the critical mass on board. So when you start an initiative like this, you're going to have a group of people that are bought in, a group of people say this will never work, and then the majority of people, what I call the fence sitters. So there's the ones sitting on the fence waiting to say, okay, which side of the fence am I going to go to? Am I going to go join the people that say this isn't going to work, or am I going to go join the group that is bought in, right? So that first success is critical to get that group of fence sitters onto the buy-in side of the fence. So the next session, we're going to talk about that change matrix and the different types of people in your organization and how to get alignment with those people.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? Okay, I think we're good, Max.
Okay. Thanks everyone for joining.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Join us again next Wednesday at noon for the next stage of this presentation.
Is the next session the same ID, Kathleen, or will we be sending out a new one?
No, I will send out another one for that.
Okay.
All right, everyone have a great day.
Thank you.